Oh, this is my group of people. When I saw that video and it said a community coming together to celebrate and rise up, I thought, okay, this is my kind of people and a message that I think is going to meet you in a way that is inspiring, that is informative. There's things that we want to learn, but also one that can be very personal, regardless of what your year and a half have been like. We know that whether it's your personal life, whether it's your clients, whether it's your colleagues and team, everyone has been in the same storm. We may have been in different boats, had a little bit of a different story to tell or different resources at our access, but this is a moment when I speak with groups, there's just incredible compassion. We're starting in a bit of a softer place. As mad as we may be at the world and people that are grumpy and disappointing things that are happening, we're also loosened up a bit and realizing that things happen that we would have never asked for. Stuff happens that we can't just gloss over and put a bow on it and come up with a jingle or a Post-it note and let it be okay. This has been a difficult time, but I'm here to tell you that what I have learned, not just in the last year and a half, but really in the course of my lifetime, as a researcher at Harvard, as a consultant, both with Gallup and in my own practice journey lead, I have been collecting stories of people that face incredibly difficult times and that they find something within themselves and something in the resources around them that help them to come out the other side stronger, more resilient, and having richer, fuller lives. And I want to share that with you tonight. I also want to just congratulate you and kind of honor you for what you've been trying to do and what you continue to do just by your profession. I love a party. I grew up in Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky. My parents are phenomenal, kind of Southern hospitality kind of people. And they knew how to just gather friends and family for a fabulous banquet. And so I have a little appreciation of not just the details and the logistics and all of the planning and thinking to put something together where people can gather around a table, but also just the intentionality, what it means to be gracious, what it means to put people at ease, to create an environment where people can share their stories, can learn from one another, can kind of let go of some of the drab of the day and enjoy being together. And that's really what I hope happens tonight. Because as you know, you can do all the work, you can set the table, make the plans, but the magic happens when we're together, right? The magic happens when we're gathered around the table telling some stories. So what I'm going to be doing tonight is sharing some things from my life, like I said, not just professionally or as a researcher and teacher, but also personally. Because one of the good things, I will say, it's been a mixed bag at times, but in the last year we've also realized that this kind of fourth wall or these siloed ways of looking at the parts of our lives are a little thinner than we realize. Let me give you an example. Some of you may remember about 2 years ago, there was a BBC reporter who was filming from his home office, a very, very professional take on some North-South Korean event that was happening in the world. And all of a sudden, the door opened, and his little toddler comes waddling in. Does anybody remember this? She comes in, just funny as can be, and there's a little baby that comes in a walker. And best of all, there's the mother that comes in, still zipping her pants from when she's in the bathroom, trying to grab the kids because this whole thing is a disaster. He's on TV, a BBC reporter, and now guess what? He has a personal life. He has a crazy toddler and a really upset mother and somebody that's going to be hearing a lot over the dinner table. So at the time, that was the most embarrassing, awful, like all the morning shows talked about what a horrendous event that had been because we got to break open and see his personal life and the messiness of what was going on behind the scenes. Well, now we call that a Tuesday, right? Now it's kind of like, oh, no kidding. I've got messy stuff going on behind me. I've got crazy kids. I've got a grumpy husband. I have a deal that's about to break through or break down. I'm not feeling that good, but I've put my makeup on today. So we've all, we know those muscles of trying to pull it all together. And even though that's been draining, even though we just yearn, and I yearn, to put my big girl panties on and my lipstick and get to Vegas to be with you in person, there is some value in hearing each other's stories all in one, where we're not trying to divide up who we are on a Saturday versus a Monday, when we're in our Sunday best, or when we're really struggling at the end of a long week. Where I first got interested in hearing about people's stories was 20 years ago. I was a doctoral student at Harvard. I had come from business. I was in Procter & Gamble and brand management. I always loved the advertisers and the brand people because they were talking about what's the essence and what's the benefit, what's the narrative, why should I care about toothpaste? It's not because of the dentist, it's because it's the shine that'll make me feel confident, that'll make me show up on that date just a little bit more snazzy. I found that really fascinating. And I got really involved in leadership training and some other things. And finally, when I got to graduate school, I decided to do a story. And because it was Harvard, there were a lot of people there that were really proud of their accomplishments. They had that headline, shiny. They had worked really hard to get there. And I decided I was really interested in hearing their most messy, icky, embarrassing experience and what they learned from it. Well, newsflash, no one signed up, so I was a little worried about that. But then I started changing my question. I said, tell me more about a crossroad in life where you could have gone that way and you could have gone that way. And what happened next made all the difference. Or tell me about a time you were really disappointed that it didn't end up, you didn't get the promotion, you didn't get the venture funding that was supposed to come through, but now you're on a path that changed everything, and you're living a full, rich life because of that. And suddenly word got out, and my interview schedule started to fill up, and I started hearing phenomenal stories that at first seemed like disasters. It was during the dot-com era. And there was somebody that had just lost millions in investments. There was a physician who was there at Harvard studying medicine and ethics who had lost a patient due to that person's human error and had to grapple with what that meant to his self-esteem and his future as a doctor. There were other things that were not just minor mess-ups. These were fairly big disasters that were public. You couldn't put it under the rug. And what happened over time, however, is the energy in how people shared their stories became so palpable. You could feel their excitement and their learning and their growth because there was so much more to the story than success or failure. Right? There's very few things in life that are just a win, lose, or draw. Our professional lives, our clients' lives, even a meeting like this is full of all kinds of ups and downs and drama and curves. We want something to end up that is meaningful and not necessarily a win. Okay, so I want you to think about what you're going through right now in the last year. Think about the innovation, even just watching that really fun video. You are having to make tough choices, not choices you would have asked to have made. No one's happy about the difficult times we've been in, right? This is not a Pollyannish, everything happens for a reason. I am not that kind of a speaker. But what it is opening our eyes and realizing when life brings us to our knees, we have a unique opportunity to first look inward, to really dig deep. What has life taught me? How resilient have I been? What tough calls have I made? This isn't the first tough time we've had, people. You've overcome all kinds of things. This may be unique in terms of doing it all at the same time on a global scale in a way that has shaken an industry, absolutely. But there is incredible depth and wisdom and great war stories that you have survived in this room. So when life brings us to our knees, we can look deep and remember and kind of grasp what those lessons have been. We also have a chance to look up, to not wallow. This is not the time. I tell some of my students, this is not the time we're going to journal and go into a meditative stance. We're going to look up and see what's happening, what could happen, what innovations are possible. Now that we're all shook up, what are we going to do next? We can see a new horizon, even though it's not the horizon we thought we were traveling towards. Didn't ask for it, didn't want it, would have pushed back the clock, could we have? But there's still a horizon out there that can give us direction and that can shine a light. And then finally, when life brings us to our knees, we dig deep, we look up, but we also reach out. No one is alone in this. Even though so many of the feelings of crisis, of turmoil, of business upset, financial upset, relational upset, one of the scariest, saddest parts of that is feeling alone, as if you're the only one going through that heartache and that you're isolated in that pain. And in kind of an odd, bittersweet, melancholy way, we actually all do know that feeling. So this started, like I said, 20 years ago with these stories. I continued as a consultant, was able to work with people and organizations around the world. I was with the Army Corps of Engineers running their executive leadership program the summer that Katrina hit, and really had to grapple with these really smart civic engineers, these scientists that are trying to figure out, boy, we weren't smart enough, or we didn't work hard enough, or we missed it. And they had to say, wow, it wasn't just that. It wasn't about being smart enough, figuring it all out. It's really about now looking at the problem much more broadly. How do we build trust? How do we get people to come back to New Orleans? How do we create communities that want to be here? It's much more than rebuilding a levee when something collapses. That's kind of the technical fix. It's the human challenge of making people want to come and gather again. I'm seeing a couple nodding heads. Does this sound familiar? It's not just the physical rebuilding or the right safety protocol, or you finally get a green light at the travel agency. It is the table that you're setting, that great banquet feast. It's the professionals like you, everyone in this room, that are making decisions about more than just solving problems and rebuilding structure. You're also trying to think holistically about what would make people want to come and join the party again. And that's really a worthy question, not just for a meeting professional, but for a leader, for a parent, for a community member. That's a worthy question of you thinking about that for your own life. So beyond being smart and a hard worker and getting down to business, if you're looking past just rebuilding, if you're looking past just a win or a better balance sheet this year, what are you doing to make it meaningful, to make sure that you're growing and learning? All right, let's dig in a little bit more deeply into some of these points. Words really matter. I grew up loving speaking. I want you to think about maybe your very, very first early passion. Maybe you're the kid that put all the Legos in a row, or maybe you were the kid, my son Ben's so competitive, he'd wake up and want to know who woke up first, like sleeping was a race. You know, like you have these things the way you're wired. For me, it was speaking. I grew up in the Bible Belt, and I'd put all of my stuffed animals, and I'd give a sermon, and we'd have an altar call, and I'd tell a story, and I'd mobilize people to action, and I'd have a phrase or two that I'd repeat. And, it wasn't about dolls or nurses. It was about sharing a story through words that inspired people and moved them to action. I bet if I gave you a few minutes, you could think of that early passion. It was before anybody made you do something. It was before you had an assignment at school, before you thought you knew what it would take to get into a certain profession. When you think about those fundamental passions and about words, peeling the onions back to see what's at the heart of things really matters. And so I want to do that about the word crisis. A crisis is not just a problem on steroids. It's not just a bad occurrence, like an accident. A crisis is fundamentally a collapse of what was, so it's going back is really not an option, okay? It's really something where we're rebuilding and a rebirth is required. In Greek, the word krisos, the root of crisis, is actually choice. You have a choice.